Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Cyber Shadow. In the last part we started off the game, now we're to Chapter 2, the Disposal Facility, which is where the game really starts to amp up the danger factor in a couple regards. But it's also where we're forced to now use our new ability we got in the last part, the Shuriken, pressing up and the attack button. It doesn't do a lot of damage, it only does 1 on its own. But it's useful for taking out enemies from a distance, but you do need to keep in mind your SP count, because now things will start dropping that as a drop on top of the yellow currency, as well as the red health. And the immediate danger in this stage is the falling trash blocks, which will hurt on their own, but if they knock you into the crushers down there, that's an insta-kill. Be careful. But we do have a new power-up type as well. This up here, which we need to get up to that switch to grab, is an SP up, and unlike health ups, which are 3 per 1 slot, an SP up is a 1 and done. And I believe at the end of the game you have the same amount of HP that you do SP, and it's a lot higher of an amount than we have right now. Now, a piece of advice I can give you about this level, because by and large the game's enemies are usually restricted to 1 level per type. In this stage, the weird red walking guys that have gas canisters on their back, they have more HP than most enemies at this point in the game do, but if you hit them in the gas tanks with your sword from behind, you take them out in 1 shot. So take your time in this level and don't exactly rush. Similarly to Ninja Gaiden and Shinobi, in those games while you have a time limit, sometimes you still want to move slowly just to make sure you can absorb the situations around you. The same goes for this, only you don't have to worry about the time limit, so you have more of an excuse to. The only kind of time limit there is in this game is finishing it in less than 3 hours for an achievement. So right here we got a little bit of a mini boss against a little bit of a hive for these rust flies we've been seeing throughout. Every time you hit it, it spawns an extra one. There are a couple of enemies that do this kind of pattern throughout the game where you hit one, they spawn another. And keeping an eye on which ones will do that can be the difference between life or death in some instances. Speaking of which, you guys like Heat Emblem stage from Mega Man 04? Because we got a gigantic laser. However, this one doesn't just massively hurt, it's an instant kill. So take your time here, don't rush through unless you know you can make it, and then you should make it to the next screen, no problem. This game is no stranger to just throwing a sudden instant death hazard at you. Honestly, I'd say most of the hazards are instant kill in this game. It's easier to count the ones that aren't, and they're usually just enemies. Thankfully, by and large, the game does a good job of introducing you to a hazard in a way where you can see how it works before it actively tries to kill you. So as long as you're, again, paying attention to what's going on in the level around you, you should be fine. That can be a little hard to do in a game like this, though, if only because there's something about playing as a ninja in a game that makes you want to go really fast and never stop moving, have your momentum keep going. Whereas, say, like in a Mega Man game, for instance, whenever there's level design hazards like that, usually you take more time to pause and absorb whatever's going on. And admittedly, on my first playthrough, I was very guilty of that in this game, just kind of not stopping to absorb whatever's going on. I've been tinkering with the service pods. We should be able to access some extra functions now. Some of them need a jolt of essence in order to work properly. I've partially filled this one, but you'll need to pay the rest. Once you've brought a function online, it stays on and can be used repeatedly. Before I go back to that topic, now we can actively use the yellow essence we've been collecting throughout the game as currency at checkpoints, either to make it so that when you die and come to the checkpoint or touch the checkpoint anyway, it fully restores your health, it fully restores your SP, or it can give you one of the several, not quite sub-weapons, because you already have a sub-weapon, the Shuriken, but assist items, essentially. In that case, it'll give you a blade extend, which, like that similar item from Ninja Gaiden, just extends the range of your blade. But here we've got a mini-boss. This is Laser Brain. It fires lasers out of the cannons on its sides after every rotation of blocks that fall out, but it can also fire some projectiles out of its main eye. I believe there's an achievement in the game for beating this thing only using the shurikens, since the trash blocks can drop SP pickups for you to use, but it's just faster to do that. Either way, as I was talking about, going back to that topic about absorbing information. On my first playthrough this game, I rushed too much, and it definitely got me into a lot of pain in terms of deaths, to the point where I want to say my first playthrough was over double the length of this one, And yeah, that's kind of the average for a lot of games to begin with, is like a first playthrough is usually the longest one of certain games and all that kind of jazz, unless you're doing a challenge run or something. But in specific with this one, it's because I rushed a bit too much. Don't break that trash block I just stood on, because it allows you to come down here to get this item right now. If you break that, you're gonna have to come back later, more than likely, or take a death, because you can use a later ability to get to that switch a little more easily. Something I find interesting about the Shuriken, though, compared to a lot of weapons that fill that kind of attack slot in games, it's not very useful for combat unless it's an enemy that already would get taken out in one shot that's just floating all over the place, sort of like a bat would in Castlevania. It's closer in some ways to just being a solution for puzzles. You can use it to hit switches from far away, you can activate certain hazards early if you need to, if they are ones that you need to interact with for that. It's useful for not the immediately obvious thing, and I find that interesting, especially compared to other games. Like, the only other series like this I can think of that would do that is some of the Shinobi games, namely Shinobi 3 would kind of do things like that with its Shuriken/kunai. And here we got a little bit of a platforming section. I believe this is leading up to an HP upgrade? Admittedly, I'm a little bit bad with remembering what goes where in terms of the power-ups. I know it's an SP upgrade, if only because they literally look the same, and because so many of them are HP upgrades because it takes 3 to get 1 point instead of the 1 per SP point. It can be kind of hard for me to remember which ones are which is kind of the inverse of, say, like a Metroid for me. Because in Metroid, I can usually remember where the energy tanks are, no problem. It's where some of the missiles are that are the problem there. Alright, so now we got an auto-scrolling elevator sequence, but don't be like me on my first playthrough. Realize you can use your Shuriken to take out the giant lasers that are firing out to avoid extra damage. On top of that, there is an achievement for this section for getting through it without getting hit. It's either that or not taking out one of the rust flies, actually. I forget exactly which one of the two it is. I'm a little bit bad with memory with that regard. I'll talk about the full list of achievements probably in one specific point down the line, if only because it's a pretty good opportunity to talk about it. But you'll see in like I think it was like part 8. The entire LP is edited, so that's why I think I remember where that is. I love this song. I love most of this soundtrack. I brought up last time this game was basically developed entirely by one dude. The only reason it's not entirely by him is the soundtrack itself, I believe. It was composed by Enrique Martin, who I believe also composed, it's like Nuclear Blaze, I think, a game that came out the same year as this. And it was produced by Jake Kaufman of a lot of Way Forward and Shovel Knight-y fame. So going back to the checkpoints, like Legion said, when you spend essence on something there, that's always unlocked. But I think in the case of these sub-weapons, you can turn off their spawning in the case you have another one equipped, or you're just not liking what that's doing to your moveset in some cases. But on top of that, don't feel obligated to spend all of your essence at all the checkpoints along the way to upgrade them to the max capacity of a checkpoint, like that one that restores your HP, SP, and gives you the sub-weapons. Because frankly, that's gonna drain your essence count real quick, and that could lead you to a case like down the line, where there's a checkpoint that doesn't automatically give all your HP back, but you don't have enough essence to upgrade it to that point anyway. On top of that, on a very literal scale, not all checkpoints are created equal. Some checkpoints take longer to get to or have more stage between them, and not every checkpoint has all 3 things available for you to purchase anyway. I think at a minimum they'll almost always have the restore your HP thing on them, but not all of them have the SP recovery, not all of them have sub-weapons. So pick your battles sparingly with your essence. The Keepers of Balance, the servants of the Eternal Dragon, our ancient clan. Defeated by those we trusted, betrayed by one of our own. What set this in motion, and how could we have not foreseen it? Good question. Notably, and not so much with the corpses you can talk to like that one. Talk to every NPC you can in the game twice, because sometimes they'll have a secondary line of dialogue. I forget to do that until, like, the latter third of the game. But it's time for the boss of this stage, the Scrambler. Scrambler is a big and hefty guy, and he will do a ground pound if you get too close to him that can cause trash to rain down from the ceiling. On top of that, he can jump a good distance, and since he's so tall, you need a trash block to jump over him to begin with. He has a couple of attacks he can fire out of his fists, namely some fire that can track along the ground from his one hand, and on his other one he can fire a giant laser he can aim high or low with. What can make this fight a little rough is the fact that he's got 2 phases, but phase 2 doesn't have a lot of HP, and plus all he does is jump and fire the bullets that track along the ground. Notably, he does just become a hit at the end, and I'm not sure if you can do anything with that. Tell me if you can. I've never been able to successfully kill it if you can. And there is an achievement for beating that boss without getting hit. I've never done it. The reactor explosion killed most of our clan, and the rest were captured by synthetics. They drained me of my power to enhance their own. Our master must be freed before all is lost. Okay, cool, but how about cool upgrade music? I love this game. The musical choice of this upgrade tone immediately after someone saying stuff like that and dying, a little weird. But now we got the Rising Fire, which I'll talk more about next time. Finally, a moment to breathe. Alright, it's time to fill you in on everything. When you get to Mecha City, you'll notice things have changed, and not for the better. Let me bring you up to speed. You knew Dr. Progen as the greatest mind in Mecha City. He built a machine capable of self-sustained, autonomous function. A synthetic humanoid. These served as laborers, police, domestic servants, you name it. Mecha City was safe and prosperous. Our clan found new purpose in upholding this peace. Our commitment was total. Missions to dispose of malfunctioning synthetics were conducted in secret. One day, our master got injured in a freak accident. She was left clinging to life. Dr. Progen grew increasingly desperate to save our master. There were all kinds of rumors, strange experiments, disappearances. Without her, our clan began to drift apart. And then, the explosion. It leveled the whole city. In the wake of the destruction, all the machines went berserk. As for Dr. Progen, driven mad with desperation, he became something else entirely. He's been tearing through Mecha City, hunting down survivors with his synthetic army. The situation is grave. We were barely able to find and save you in time. But all that matters now is finding and releasing our master. If you fail, Mecha City will only be the beginning. The destruction will keep spreading. You know, no pressure. You can do it, Shadow. I know you can. I hope we can too, buddy. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching. And in part 3, chapter 3, ooh, numbers increase. See you guys then.